Hello guys, today I will show you how to construct a simple state patterns, and there are just the 6 scripts here. And the first script is I like to think about the state pattern as a triangle where each vertex has a script. So the first vertices will be the I state, that is a interface. Inside this interface, there is a method that receives a type. In this case, this type is mine, that is the player controller, where all the functionality will be. The second vertex of the pattern is the state context. Let me show you. The state context is just to have a constructor. Inside this constructor we pass the controller that we need, so all the scripts you have access to this controller. And we have a current state, so we can know we know in which state we are, and the reference here to a player controller, and two methods. The first method, we just call the handle method that is inside the state, I state, passing the controller. And if we need, we have another method that we can call just, but this time setting the state. In the third vertex of the triangle will be each one of the states. So I have created here a simple example with a cube and 3 states. I set up the first state to be rotating, and if I press the T, the S button, this stops. That is the second state. And if I press T when I am the stop state, I go to scale state, and I come back to stop pressing S, and I can go to rotate pressing R. So let me show you each one of the states. That is the third vertex of my triangle in the state pattern. And first one is the stop. So inside the stop we have a reference for the player controller. We create the contract here with the I state, and we implement the I handle. Here we verify if the player controller has the reference of the player controller that we receive. And I put 2 conditions here. The pressing T, I go to the scale state, so I call the player controller scale state. And if I press R, I go to the player controller rotate state. Coming to the rotate state, here I have if, the same logic here of course, and if here, that if I press S, I go to the stop state, and otherwise I just keep rotating. And in the scale state, I create a method here using the sine function just to keep it scale, so we can see it is scale in and out using the sine function. This is a simple method. So each one of the entry of the vector 3 has a sign, and I put a scale here with the scale 100, but it's not relevant for our example. Then I put here, if I press the S key, we go to the stop state. And by the end, we have a player controller. This player controller, of course, can be whatever kind of controller you have. In this case, this is stated to control the states of the player. So I call the main script here, that is a monobehavior player controller. But if it was an enemy, it will probably be an enemy controller. Inside this enemy controller, we have the first thing we need is a state context, so this one here. So with this state context we can access the transition methods. So for example, in the update I just call the state transition without the parameter, without passing the argument. So it's this first one here, where we just call the handle inside the transition, and after that we need to set up the context using the transition, saying which state we are. So I have all the states here, a reference for them. In the start I get all the reference using the get component, and because each one of the states, as you can see, is a mono behavior, so it will be inside the component. Of course, I did some state pattern before, just in a way that we are not using mono behavior, but I like this one here using mono behavior because I can have access to the audio, to the collider just from this script, so it's much easier to create the functionality here. In the other one I did, I used I pass all the functionalities throughout the play controller, for example, in this case, but I don't like it because the play controller becomes a big script. In this way we can see that it's very clean. We have just for each one of the states we create a public function method that we set up the context, passing the corresponding state, and when we need to use the state, we need to transit, we just call the transition the player controller and the corresponding state. In the rotate I call the stop, for example, but in the stop I call the the scale or rotate. And of course we can use here the because we are using a mono behavior, we can create an on trigger enter, for example, that we, or for by distance we can create a method here to verify the distance from the player and something, and we can create all the functionalities all inside each one of the states and transition to each state when we need. And this is it. It's very simple and it's very beautiful. So I ask you, if you like the video, please give a like to the video, and if you are not subscribed, subscribe to the channel, and I see you in the next one. Goodbye.